So, how was your week?
My week was good. How was yours? I guess I'll go into it a little bit. Just good and move on. It's not really typical for us, right? We got to share a little bit.
That's right.
So the week was very full because I've got a new intern working for me with helping me out with these, basically some of these business things. And I want to do a launch. So I am going to just do the simple seed launch where you put that announcement out there. You do an 11-day sequence to keep promoting it. And then you go for it. And you go for it with a pretty decent outline, but with the idea in mind that you're really going to use your clientele to extract those things that are really important to them within this first go-round on the class. And yeah, I feel pretty good about having a great outline for it and some of the details, and feel good about a preview webinar already, and I'm going to go for it. So tomorrow is go time on a launch. So.
Oh, cool. Well, good luck with that.
Yeah, thank you. So that's the deal. And I've been very busy with that. We went on a little day trip yesterday with the fam, and that catches us up. How about you?
I had a very interesting week. It was sad, very, very sad in the beginning. I dropped Anna off at camp, and that hit me way harder than I expected. So, because it was crazy. We've had a pretty intensive summer with all of our homework. I've needed some me time for a long time. So I was anticipating it to be kind of like a nice thing. And I knew she would be well taken care of at camp. I needed my alone time. But then the reality of it hits. It's like, she's there and I can't talk to her. They cut the parents off, and it's a very nice cocoon. I know she's well taken care of. It's all good stuff, but woo, the first couple of days was a lot of missing her. So
yeah, looks like you're still feeling it.
I am, because I haven't had the chance to talk to her.
Yeah.
So until I do that, at least first reconnect, and she's going to be gone for 4 weeks total, 3 more weeks. So
wow.
Yeah. So we'll see.
That's a pretty long camp.
And she wanted it. We were signing her up for 2 weeks. Anyways, that's what she was going to get. And she begged for 4. She had a couple of things that she needed to work for to get that extra 2. And she did it. So
nice.
Here we are.
Oh, boy.
Yeah. And, of course, I was out on Thursday night to see the movie. So I can't wait to talk about it. It was awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, I want to see it again.
Yeah, cool.
So, Inside Out.
Well, yes. Agreed. I need to see it again. So what do you think?
Well, I guess if we just want to dive in and look at like why we talked about this, as being one of the things to kick it off with, I'm sure you kind of have an idea now of why I said go watch a cartoon. So
right.
It's more than just a cartoon.
We'll let our viewers also know that the theme of the month is acute self-awareness.
Yeah.
So as soon as I said that, you said, got to do Inside Out.
Yeah,
so cool.
Totally. So they reworked this movie after beginning to write it. A dad wrote the movie. A dad that I think is in the movies anyways, got other experience directing movies and so on, but he wrote the movie around his daughter's changes during those tween and teen years, and then he rewrote it. He was like, something's not right here. There's something missing on this interplay of the relationship. I'm not sure where, this story is complete enough. And so he talked to a lot of mental health professionals, so I did a little bit of digging on it to really get it right. And so they painted this picture of this little girl that's going through some transitions in life and going up against some scary things too. And I thought it was really powerful how it was all put together. And I did take my kids because it's an animated movie and it has great story, even for little kids and maybe some of those some of those things could be pulled out subconsciously at this point, but for the most part, I wanted to check it out myself.
Cool. So all three girls, did you take all of them?
Mm-hmm. Took all three. Yep.
And so their ages range from, once again?
6 to 11.
6 to 11. Okay, that's interesting. Yeah. I did not go with any kids.
Yeah, that's fine. It's definitely a deep movie. I was watching it from the adult's perspective. So for me, there was this cool parallel too with this diagnostic I created that's focused on solving stress. And I thought it was really amazing that in the wavelengths, so to speak, there was two different things going on along the very similar lines to try and bring this inside stuff out where, that's a great title for the movie. And I was doing the same thing for the purpose because, I've got kids that hide it and they hide it really well. And they maybe don't have the languaging for just, hey, let's talk about feelings today. They're just not into that. But you do something with personifying the emotions like this movie did. And, what I did is similar, like creating a visual representation of feelings. And it's really cool to kind of think of it from that perspective. And for me, it's also amazing on that perspective. There's an opportunity here to really, I think, move forward. If there's this kind of thing in the wavelengths and movie ideas and my idea, it seems like when that happens, there's a ripeness and a readiness for taking a dive into this new territory. And I think we've done a lot of work in other territories like technology and so on, but we really haven't done a ton to proactively deep dive into ourselves.
Yeah. As soon as I heard about the movie, and I can't remember the first discussions or where I even started to hear about it, but it was through word of mouth. Yeah, I didn't see a commercial. I didn't hear anything on the radio type of thing. I'm probably pretty sure my daughter might have mentioned, or somebody at work.
Yeah.
But as soon as I heard about it, I was like, so cool that they're doing something, to describe this and to really help people tap into maybe not only just labeling our emotions, but also just talking about it. There's a movie out there now that we can kind of watch. And so at least I didn't go with, obviously, my daughter, but there was only a few. It was a Thursday night, and I think the movie's been playing now for 6 weeks. So there might have been a dozen people total in the theater. One little boy, I felt so bad for him because he had like a little tank top. I bring a sweatshirt every time I go to a movie because you never know how cold it's going to be, right?
Right, sure.
So this poor little boy, he starts complaining about how cold it is. And his mother so lovingly puts him into her lap. And then you don't hear anything for a little bit. But then after a while, he starts complaining again. He's just so cold. So they end up leaving. And he was really little. He must have been maybe 4-ish or so. So, that was what it was. There was some younger kids behind me. And I'll get into what their comments were toward the end of the movie, which is really interesting.
Cool.
But at least first off, the movie starts kicking in, and I'm so impressed with the graphics and the animation. From a technical aspect, it's like, wow, Hollywood keeps delivering. Things get better and better all the time. I loved how Joy was kind of iridescent. It's like her outer was not well defined. How cool was that?
Yeah, she had a little bit of a glow, and yeah, that was pretty, I like that too. I noticed that.
Yeah, so let's take it through the movie. Opening scene, it's got this little baby, and oh my gosh, talk about the graphics. That was amazing, right?
Yeah.
And then not too far into it, we see, I think it was Joy and Sadness, and the very, very inception of life, the version of the control room or the brain has one little button.
Yeah.
Was that adorable?
Yeah.
So we're starting to get an idea of what what's going on here, establishing the characters. And I love how Sadness, as soon as the baby cries for the first time, Sadness is going to press the button.
Yeah.
Joy's like, hey, whoa.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
what's next?
Well, yeah. So then it develops further and develop memories out of this. And, these memories are, and you start to see the play inside of the body or brain or mind of the main character. What's the main character's name? What's the little girl's name again?
Oh, Riley.
Riley, right. So Riley, you see what's going on inside of Riley, and there's like little people in there literally, and they are, battling back and forth for pushing button, and the core memories start to kick in too, like some things around hockey and other big things like having fun with her dad. So she starts to develop these core memories, and so they have like little marbles or little balls that come out that either are colored with the color of the characters. So Joy was yellow or like clearish, and Sadness was blue. And they're really simple. Like you get one color on one ball, and so you start off with these really simple memories, and then there's the core memories that have a special place in her mind. So that's where it starts to go to from there. And then
so I loved how.
Go ahead, kick in.
Yeah, that, and then like you're saying, like it was interesting all along the way, and even after, the next day as I'm kind of trying to replay the things. So they had these connectors to the islands, and that I remember my daughter talking about afterwards as she tried to explain the movie to me, something about these islands, and at first I was like, I had no idea what she was talking about. So I thought that was interesting about how they just depicted that and illustrated it. And also the type of islands.
Yeah.
So there was that Silly Monkey Island.
Yeah.
And I think early on it certainly makes sense as they're portraying Riley's life, and this is Riley's brain, right?
Yeah.
So it's interesting how it paints such a unique perspective to Riley.
Right.
So it's not like everybody has a Silly Monkey Island, but there's a relatively equal type of Silly Monkey Island probably in everybody's brain, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So what else did you love about it?
Yeah, so you're right. Like those were the core memories. Like that's what the core memory created. These little islands and these little connectors to the core memories were so important. So I liked when the movie switched, and then you started to see things get way more complex. And I got the idea to like take a vision of like what you're doing as a parent with your young kids as kind of like maybe the car controls and things that you see within a car, and then when you get to the teenage years, it's more like an airline captain's cockpit. Like it gets way more complex, and that's what they depicted in the picture next. Like when some challenges came up and they had to move, they started to show that Riley had the balls got colored with multiple colors, and Joy was like trying to protect them from being touched by Sadness, but Sadness was putting her, color on all of the memories. And then the core memories were at stake. And then it was like, oh my gosh, that means things are going to really go wrong. And it got scary. And I thought this was so cool that all of this stuff got scary without like this typical Hollywood villain. It was like the villain within all of us. And,
good point.
How we've got to battle through these things within. And that was really amazing writing right there too, is how do you make a movie without the formula? And they still weaved in the formula a little bit, but it was internal. And the memories starting to get colored, and then like those core memories were at stake. And then when they started to get blown apart, and then she started to do some scary things. Like I can't imagine what it would be like with a little 11, 12-year-old kid out there in the city, trying to catch a bus. Like that was like, oh my God, that if you're thinking that's a real thing and that kind of thing can happen, that's whoa. And then showing what's going on internally with that, with things kind of breaking down and falling apart. And And then maybe that was going to be a major problem and change her life.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So yes. So the moment I think you're talking about is when things switch, and this is my favorite scene, I think, of the whole movie. And this is why I'll need to see it again.
Yeah.
I wish I could have just freeze framed it. They're at the dinner table, and in the back, you know that joy and sadness have just left the control room. You know, they get sucked away, right?
Yeah.
And Riley's at the dinner table with mom and dad. So I love that whole thing. It was hysterical, right? So you're left with disgust, anger, and fear.
Yeah.
Oh, how funny. Was that hysterical?
That was a fun conversation over dinner, wasn't it?
When the mom looks at Riley like, oh my God, who is this child? And then not only that, but that's the first time too they start to show mom's control room.
Right.
Oh, that's where I'm like, oh, I needed to savor that more.
Yeah.
Because they give you this quick glimpse, and there's these 5 women hanging at this very, very sophisticated control panel.
Yeah.
No one's panicking. They're all like sophisticated, you know? I wanted more of that. And then, right, they look over at the dad. She's trying to get, you know, that intuitive connection between mom and dad. She's trying to get it.
Right.
And he's like, still looking at his dinner or whatever, right?
Yeah.
And eventually, you get to see inside of his.
Right.
What does that look like?
Well, yeah, that was, what did she say? I don't know.
Right. Wait a minute.
Let's
Don't
mumble
panic.
something. Quick, mumble something, or what? You know, I got to see it again too, because that was good. That was really
and
hilarious.
actually, right. So I guess from an adult perspective, up until then, it was kind of slow and easy, and I was wondering, like, okay, you know, I'm getting it already. But, you know, as soon as they hit that one, I was like hysterical.
Right. No more joy, no more you know, Monkey Island going on, and none of that was working either. Dad was like, let's go back to the Monkey Island stuff. And
No. Well, what did it look like inside of his control panel? Do you remember?
Well, yeah, that was like, at first he was like, oh, what did she say? Because they were thinking about the game or something. And
right. So he's got all the sports.
He had to read.
It's like the man cave.
Yeah. He was in his man cave. And so he had to loop back into the whole thing. And, then he was trying his old tricks, and it wasn't happening at all. Riley was, you know, kicking that to the curb. Those ideas were done. Yeah. So he's like, oh man, I got all my go-to things taken away, and he was at a loss.
Cool. So even before that happens, one scene that I also really almost would love some dialogue about is when Joy draws with the chalk, that circle, really small circle, right? Mm-hmm. And Sadness has like 1 foot outside the circle. Yeah. And she pushes it in. Yeah. And she's trying to tell Sadness, listen, this is all you get. Do not move. Don't mess up anything else. Don't screw around. This is all you get.
Yeah.
You know, so as we play that or kind of take that into the real world, right? That's what we want to do.
Right.
We want to put Sadness in this little small square and say, you know what? You don't have the luxury of going wherever you want and doing your own thing, right?
Right. And how's that working out for us, right?
Right. Right.
Yeah, but so she kept escaping. Like they'd turn around and Sadness is over there touching the memories, and she's like, oh, I didn't realize I was touching them. And you know, it was so innocent, and you know, she was coloring the memories, and everybody's like, cut that out. And that's where they're trying to box her in, is because she was tainting everything. And
right.
they couldn't do anything to keep her in. They kept trying to put her somewhere or guard her or watch her, and
exactly.
It was just a part of the landscape within.
Yeah. Which is so true too, that the more we try and put it in or keep it contained, it's like fester, rot. That eventually the pressure, it's going to blow.
Yeah. So then we could jump over to a point where they finally got the clue, and Joy was like, all right, Sadness, this is your time. Like, we can't put you in the box because we're at a loss. We're we don't know what to do. And then Sadness naturally knew exactly what to do. And it was to fully feel it out. Like, she was there basically, you had this inner thing where it's all Riley, but the bottom line is that Riley was able to, have that Sadness connection. And so when that connection happened and there was some either validation of what was going on there or just Sadness there to listen through it, it changed everything. and then some new islands started to form, which was really cool. So the old islands that crashed and went away, it was okay because now there was a new, more complex core memory happening, and that was fine. Like, that was part of growing up, and that was part of this massive shift, is that something had to just crash and burn for there to be the next phase, that was cool. I like that, because that really, for me, when I see this happening in real time, it really depicts it well. Like, there's a massive switch from ninth graders coming in to these 12th graders going out. It's a pretty amazing time to watch those 4 years in particular.
Yeah, and I know as a parent too, I think there's this fear, and when there is a rupture or a fight or a situation that I know I've had some that I just did not handle well, to say the least, right?
Yeah.
And I think some of the follow-up is that you feel like you've killed this island and it's no longer. But I think the beauty of part of the movie depicted that we're resilient and we can bring those things back, so they're not completely dead. And not only that, but then we can make new islands.
Yeah.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, and if you get stuck in a rut and you won't let those go, it's going to hold yourself back in a way. Like that was happening within Riley naturally, and I could see where it's in a case where it's not operating in this nice little Hollywood way. You definitely can maybe see, well, people don't let go of those islands that are supposed to die away, and that something brand new is supposed to come. And there's really, an attempt to hold to things maybe too long, and maybe there's an absolute need to let things go so that you can embrace there's a real new thing happening here, and it's time to embrace that. And that's tough for people. Like, that's where fear kicks in and makes it so it's so hard to just embrace what.
I loved how, like you were talking earlier. Oh, sorry.
You're good.
You still there?
I am.
Sorry. So you were talking earlier about the sophistication of the control panel too, about how it looks more like you're flying a plane rather than driving a car. But didn't you find it interesting how Anger had those real, like the plane handles, like you're really like kicking it into like, like, well, what's the word I want to say? Well,
there was no subtlety or, it wasn't very nuanced anymore. They were very rough controls, and
it's like jet speed.
Yeah.
Cool. So a couple cool things, and I know we're just, flying here through time, but.
Well, let's go over time a little bit. This one's really good.
This is fun.
Keep going, Maria.
Because I'd like to talk about 3 different pieces that I thought they did awesome, which I wanted more. So I could see a sequel to this too, easily. So Subconscious. Was that cool? How they did that whole going down into this area.
Oh, yeah.
Was that cool?
Yes, that was cool.
Love that. Loved
The giant clown.
the giant clown. That was hysterical.
I don't think my kids will like clowns, no.
I know, right?
They never had a problem with clowns before, but now they might.
Now it's scary. It's a nightmare. And then the whole abstract, I forget what it was called. What was that big tunnel area where abstract thought was?
Yeah, I think that's what it was, just abstract thought.
Abstract thought,
yeah. Like, pretty freaky too.
Oh, that was hysterical how they did that whole thing too. I was like,
yeah.
Then I wanted to do research on abstract thought. I mean, that almost sounded like there were 4 very distinct, and maybe if you're an artist, you know, it's not my thing, but that was cool.
Yeah, just brilliant writing. Some of the best writing I've seen in a movie where you're really trying to portray reality, and you just totally reconfirmed in a land of visual learning, or just our visual desires. Like YouTube's the #1 website. Like, we've got to go more in that direction if we're going to embrace how we're going to learn going forward. And so if we're going to look in this inner realm of ours, let's embrace this. Like, this is maybe the way to go if we're going to try and figure this stuff out. And maybe mindfulness is not something that's just in there invisible. Maybe we can figure out a lot of cool ways to make it visual. So I got a lot of ideas cooking from this. And, you know, Maria, then to the end of the movie, I thought it was so fun to watch inside of the minds of other things. How about you? You remember
like what?
At the very end, like the cat, the dog.
Oh my gosh. I know. Doesn't it, it's like they're scratching the surface here. Like, I can easily see that being like a regular daily show for kids, like a series.
Yeah.
Yeah, how cool.
So I actually reached out. I don't know. I'm going to keep pushing it, but I reached out to the agent for Pete Docter, and I'm sure he's probably as busy as he's ever been in his lifetime. And
cool.
I'd like to find a way to make. Well, I asked him if he'd like to make some connections outside of the realm of the theme park stuff and the dolls, and you know, there's always a life of its own off of some of these movies that are a hit. But I want it to take a life of its own in that direction of how can we do something daily for kids? How can we do something maybe with charting all of these feelings? Because I had one student that took my chart that's based on stress, and she added happiness, anger, and I think sadness. Like, so she added 3 of the characters from the movie in addition to stress. So she broke it out and weaved 4 little colored lines within a chart to show how she was doing on a daily basis from day to day to day. And then it was really cool. So instead of having a conversation around these feelings, I saw that there was a little nudge up on the chart that she drew on happiness. But I would expect that there'd be a nudge down that was symmetrical on the anger and stress, and there wasn't. Or the sadness. I think all 3 of those stayed pegged way up high. And there was some pretty big trauma that was going on for her and for our whole school community, really. And I asked her, well, why'd this one nudge up on the happiness scale and nothing nudged down? And she said there was something scheduled for that day that was a happy thing for the day, but it just wasn't enough to pull these other more intense feelings down at all. But it just was a little bit of, you know, a little dash of happiness and put the happiness meter up a little bit for the day. So I had this little, like, was this a smudge? Was this drawn on purpose? And I had a thing to point to on the board to talk about what's going on inside this teenage girl. And it was like powerful to have her actually say, no, that's not an accident. Like, I drew it up for a reason. And then it's not automatic that it would be symmetrical, because I used that later with other kids and saw that it typically was symmetrical. And right out of the gates, I assumed that that should be symmetrical. One goes up, the other goes down. Not the case. Not when these feelings are more complex, and not when these things going on within us are more complex. But then keeping it simple with the visual is so cool. And I'd like to really see this get some legs.
That's so awesome. I love to hear that, because that was part of what I was thinking as well. Is I was really interested to understand, and it played for a great movie. And I realized, you know, at some point you got to cut certain things off, you know, just to keep in the constraints. But I thought it was interesting to see what 5 emotions they were really playing with. And of all of them, really, they really took a lot and I can see how it resonates with a lot of people, you know, really of the uppers and the lowers, or the catabolic and the anabolic is how I talk about it in energy leadership, is really they only had one representative from the more positive, or the anabolic, was joy. And all of the other four were more catabolic: the sadness, the anger, fear, and disgust. I thought disgust was an interesting choice. Although whenever you see that scene at the dinner table, it's for an 11-year-old, it's perfect, right?
Yes. Hilarious.
But I would have liked the scene more, like you said, like more of the anabolic ones. Where's empathy? Where's compassion? How do those things fit in?
Well, that's the toughest thing when I'm meeting with parents that, we're going to look, what's your vision look like? That's a real struggle. But when we're digging into like what's wrong, let's list off a list of like 50 things in 30 seconds. So I think that, so when you look at something like that, for me, that's telling about where we're at. And maybe that's where they wrote, this is where a teenager is at too. But I think, you're looking at something a little bit deeper. I think that's really common no matter what age we are in this day and age, that it's tougher to find those positives, and maybe they're just simpler, and maybe there's not as much to it.
True. We can identify with them much easier. Also, I'm doing the desire map with Danielle Laporte, and she's also she touches on the fact that it's so easy to get into those, the negative, the lower ones, right?
Yes.
So she trains us very specifically. She said, it's so easy to go down that road of bitching and complaining and all the yuck, right? So as she's getting us into habits, it has to be intentional. You have a choice. So what she always does is she always says, if there's 5, like positive things, good things that we're going to say about our day, good things that we're going to say about our desires and our goals, or where we want to go, why this is what's working about this in my life. And then she only does 3 of the things that are not working, very intentionally. And she tells you, she says, we do it this way because we have to this of just gravitating toward that positive thing. And I think that's huge. And I think that's really that free will, our own choice, what habits we build, is to go in that direction. But it's complicated.
Yeah. I don't think it's just a teenage thing. I know that's what they depicted in the movie, but I think, that's kind of our viewpoint. And, I would say what I've seen with teenage boys too, it's kind of like on or off with the extremes of one or the other. And it's almost like there's just 2 that you see that are accepted, and it's like outbursts of anger. And then just, well, I guess the other one could be just like extreme quietness and just not saying much at all, not letting you in. And then there's, goofing off and having a good time. And that's obviously generalizing, but that's what I see a ton of. Like there's almost this non-acceptance of more ranges of emotion, and especially letting them out there. And where would I let these other ones out? It's not accepted for me to have the sadness or the fear. Those are things that are not acceptable, generally speaking.
Yeah, that's a tough one, because we need to let it exist. That's really important. To ignore it, can get really bad. But then to play with it in a way that, keeps you grounded and keeps you moving toward, what you're really passionate and all the good stuff, is really that complicated middle ground. So, hey, I'm going to call some time here. We'll start to wrap up. It's been an awesome show. Yeah,
this was a really, really good one. I enjoyed just the banner back on I think there's a pretty important movie. Just, I think it's fun that it's animated, and I think that's how Hollywood finds its way in. If you really look at some of these movies, to pull away a nugget or 2, almost all of them have a nugget or two, even if they are built within the formula sometimes. So it was exciting with this one because I felt like this one was easy. Like they had a lot of awesome things going on within it, very well written. As I said earlier, the director, Pete Docter, he backed up and stopped and then got some more research and input on it to make it stronger, and I think it was well done.
Well done in the end. True. I love that we have this movie now, and I love that this, was, as we set our new format, I'll say here, it was a kickoff, and now we can always go back and kind of pull it in, I think. I think it's a case, as a metaphor in life. It's hey, how can you relate? Just like your stress tool. So I look forward about bringing it into future conversations, and it's part of our world now.
Absolutely, it was a good one.
Cool. So what's coming up this week? Anything what are you looking forward to?
Well, I look forward to making a big push to get out there more myself, and so that's what I'm kicking off before I go back to dual jobs, business and school counseling. So I look forward to making one last big run here. You've got a chunk of time, and I've got 4 more days, so it's exciting to look at. Instead of saying, "Oh no, I've only got 4 more days," before I'm in this dual role, I am excited to make the most of these last 4 days.
Cool.
And
awesome.
some more fam time, too.
And more fam time. Good for you.
Yeah.
So I am working on my relationship with sadness as I deal with my daughter being at camp. I am working also on tapping into more joy to figure out partly, part of as she's gone is really getting in touch with my passions and what brings me joy in life, so that I can share it with the world.
Very nice.
Cool. Thank you so much, Donovan. That's all for today, and I'll see you next week.
All right, Maria, see you next week. And this is Donovan from Get Ready Coaching. And it takes a team to raise a teenager. So you guys have a great week. And Maria, take it away.
All right, Maria Kaufman with Healthy Tweens. Have a great week. Talk to you next week.